When someone stayed, it was the kind of evening that felt heavier than usual. The sky hung low with gray clouds, and the world seemed to move too fast for anyone to notice a single person sitting alone on a bench outside the hospital. Anya sat there, her hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes fixed on the sliding doors that opened and closed with quiet indifference. Every time they opened, her heart leapt, then sank. She had told everyone she was fine. She had insisted she didn't need company. But loneliness has a way of settling in when fear takes over, and fear was all she felt as she waited for news she wasn't ready to hear. That's when someone stayed. It was a nurse finishing her shift. She noticed Anya sitting there, unmoving, as if she had been part of the bench itself. The nurse paused, hesitated, and then sat down beside her without a word. No questions. No advice. Just presence. Minutes passed. Then more. The city lights flickered on one by one, and the air grew cooler. Anya felt the quiet weight beside her and finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. She talked about her worries, her exhaustion, and how afraid she was of being alone if the news went badly. The nurse listened, truly listened, nodding softly, never rushing her words. When Anya ran out of things to say, the nurse stayed silent, too. She didn't check her phone. She didn't look at the time. She simply stayed. Eventually, the doors opened again, and this time the doctor called Anya's name. The news wasn't perfect, but it was hopeful. Anya turned to thank the nurse, only to find the bench empty. The nurse had gone back inside, leaving behind nothing tangible, no note, no name. Yet Anya felt lighter than she had all evening. She realized then that kindness doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it doesn't try to fix anything at all. Sometimes kindness is just choosing not to leave, even when you could. And long after words fade, the memory of someone who stayed continues to warm the heart. Yellow Heart Anya didn't sleep much that night. Even though hope had finally found its way into the doctor's words, her mind kept returning to the bench outside the hospital, and the nurse who had stayed. In a place filled with constant movement, urgency, and noise, that small pocket of stillness felt almost unreal, like a gentle pause the world had offered her when she needed it most. The next morning, she returned to the hospital earlier than necessary. The corridors smelled of disinfectant and quiet resilience. She found herself scanning faces, nurses passing with clipboards, families whispering in corners, doctors moving with practiced speed. She wasn't looking for a name. She didn't even know what she would say if she found her. She only knew she wanted to acknowledge the kindness that had wrapped around her fear the night before. As hours passed, Anya noticed something else. She began to see how often people sat alone. A man stared at a vending machine as if it might answer his prayers. A woman held a child's shoe in her hand, her shoulders shaking silently. An elderly patient waited near the elevator, eyes fixed on the floor, surrounded by strangers yet utterly alone. Anya felt something shift inside her, a soft echo of what she had been given. When a young boy dropped his toy car and watched it roll beneath a chair, Anya picked it up and handed it back with a smile. When the elderly man struggled to stand, she offered her arm. When the woman with the child's shoe met her eyes, Anya didn't say anything, she simply sat beside her. She stayed. The hours felt different this time. They passed more gently, like time understood that rushing wasn't necessary. Anya realized that the nurse's kindness hadn't ended when she walked away. It had continued, quietly, through Anya herself. Later that afternoon, as Anya prepared to leave, a nurse approached her at the exit. It was the same nurse, the one from the bench. She smiled, as if they were old friends. "I'm glad things went okay," the nurse said softly. Anya felt her throat tighten. "You stayed," she replied. "You didn't have to." The nurse shrugged gently. "Sometimes people don't need answers," she said. "They just need to know they're not alone." As Anya stepped outside into the sunlight, she carried those words with her. She understood now that staying wasn't about time, it was about choice. And every day, in small, quiet moments, that choice could change someone's world. Seedling days turned into weeks, and life slowly returned to its familiar rhythm. Appointments were fewer, the hospital visits less heavy, and the fear that once lived constantly in Anya's chest began to loosen its grip. Yet something inside her had changed in a way she couldn't name at first. The memory of that evening on the bench stayed with her, not as a moment of fear, but as a lesson written quietly into her heart. She began to notice how often people asked, "Are you okay?" without waiting for an answer. How often comfort was offered quickly and withdrawn just as fast. The nurse hadn't done that. She hadn't filled the silence or tried to brighten the darkness. She had simply stayed long enough for the fear to feel shared. One evening, weeks later, Anya received a call from a friend who sounded unusually quiet. There was no dramatic crisis, no urgent problem, just exhaustion spilling through the phone. In the past, Anya might have offered advice, hurried reassurances, or promised to call back later. Instead, she sat down and listened. When the words ran out, she stayed on the line, breathing into the silence together. Neither of them spoke for a while. And yet, it was enough. Another time, during a power outage in her neighborhood, Anya noticed her elderly neighbor sitting alone in the dim hallway, afraid of the darkness. Anya brought a candle and sat beside her. They talked about small things, weather, old memories, favorite meals. When the lights returned, the neighbor squeezed Anya's hand and said, "Thank you for not leaving." That sentence stayed with her. Anya realized that staying wasn't a grand gesture. It didn't require bravery or special skill. It required attention. It required the willingness to place someone else's moment above your own schedule, even briefly. In a world trained to move on quickly, staying was a quiet rebellion. Months later, Anya passed the hospital again. The bench was still there, worn smooth by time and waiting. She sat for a moment, letting the memory wash over her. Families passed, doors opened and closed, lives shifted inside those walls. Somewhere inside, the nurse was likely staying with someone else, unseen, unremembered by name. Anya smiled. She understood now that kindness doesn't always travel in circles where gratitude returns directly. Sometimes it moves forward instead, carried from one person to another, changing shape but never losing its warmth. And so the world kept moving. People kept leaving. But here and there, in small pockets of quiet courage, someone stayed, and that made all the difference. Blossom time continued its steady march, and Anya found herself stronger than she had ever expected to be. Life still carried its weight, appointments, responsibilities, quiet worries that surfaced late at night, but fear no longer ruled her. What stayed with her instead was an awareness, a soft attentiveness to the moments most people rushed past. One rainy afternoon, Anya volunteered at a small community center near her home. It wasn't anything grand, just tea, chairs arranged in uneven circles, and people who arrived carrying invisible burdens. Some spoke freely. Others sat in silence, hands wrapped around warm cups. Anya didn't try to fill the room with words. She remembered the bench, the nurse, the stillness. She let the silence breathe. A young woman arrived late, eyes red from crying, her coat still damp from the rain. She sat in the corner, clearly unsure whether to stay. Anya caught her glance and offered a small, reassuring smile. When the session ended and people began to leave, the woman remained behind, staring at the flow.